before you said a single word. Before the handshake, before the introduction, before you had any opportunity to decide what to show and what to hide, the assessment was already complete. Someone in that room had already looked at you, processed what they saw, and arrived at a conclusion that would govern every interaction they would ever have with you from that moment forward. Not a conclusion about your intelligence, not about your status or your history or your character. A conclusion about your accessibility. They need 5 seconds. 5 seconds of observing how you hold yourself when you think no one important is watching. 5 seconds of registering the specific quality of your eye contact or the specific quality of its absence. 5 seconds of reading the gap between how you want to be perceived and how you actually land in a room. The predatory mind does not deliberate, it does not sit across from you and consider. It runs a behavioral scan so fast and so instinctive that the person running it could not stop it even if they wanted to. And in the first 5 seconds of encountering you, that scan returns a result. The result is either proceed or not. This one. Most men will never know which result their presence produces. You are about to know. There was a man who spent his entire career documenting how power actually selects its targets, not how it should, how it does. He sat inside the courts of Renaissance Florence and watched the most dangerous people in Europe operate with their masks fully removed. And he recorded what he saw with a precision so exact and so exposing that the most powerful institutions of his era had only one response to his work. They banned it. Not because Niccolo Machiavelli was wrong, because he was too accurate, because what he documented about how human beings actually assess, select, and exploit each other was so uncomfortably true that making it widely available felt dangerous to the people who depended on others not knowing it. He wrote about target selection, about the specific, observable, involuntary signals that communicate to the predatory mind that a particular individual is safe to approach, with the calm detachment of a man reporting a natural phenomenon rather than a moral outrage. He wrote one line that contains the entire architecture of what this video is about to expose. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. He was not writing about stupidity. He was writing about signal, the specific unconscious behavioral broadcasts that communicate to the predatory mind, not just that deception is possible, but that it is safe. 3 things. Read in 5 seconds, without your knowledge or consent, and at least one of them is operating in your presence right now. Let me tell you what the assessment actually looks for. Because most men think predatory behavior is obvious. They think the person running the assessment on them looks like a threat, acts like a threat, gives some visible signal that they should be cautious. They do not. The predatory mind in your environment does not announce itself. It does not arrive with hostility or aggression, or any of the signals your instincts were designed to detect. It arrives with warmth, with interest, with the specific quality of attention that makes you feel seen rather than observed. And while you are feeling seen, the assessment is running. It runs on 3 specific signals, not 20, not 10, 3. Because the predatory assessment is not comprehensive, it is efficient. It is not looking for everything about you. It is looking for the specific behavioral signatures that answer one question with total certainty. Is this person safe to approach? Not safe in the physical sense, safe in the predatory sense, meaning, will this person resist? Will they push back? Will they enforce consequences? Will they recognize what is happening before it has already happened? Or will they absorb what is done to them and call it life? 3 signals answer that question, and they answer it in 5 seconds. 1. The quality of your stillness. The first thing a predatory mind reads about you has nothing to do with what you say, nothing to do with what you wear, how you present yourself, or any conscious choice you have made about how you want to be perceived. It is the quality of your stillness. Specifically, whether you have any. Watch what happens when a man enters a room, not the man who announces himself loudly, the man who enters quietly. Watch what his body does in the first 3 seconds before he has established his position. Does he scan? Does his gaze move immediately, seeking reference points, seeking faces that recognize him, seeking confirmation that he belongs? Does his body shift slightly, adjusting, recalibrating based on what the room gives back to him? Or does he simply arrive? Does he enter the room the way a building enters a landscape, without negotiating his right to be there, without requiring the room's acknowledgement before settling into his own presence? These are two completely different men, and the predatory mind reads the difference in under 2 seconds. The man who scans is broadcasting one piece of information above all others. His internal state is dependent on external input. He needs the room to give him something: recognition, warmth, confirmation, before he can fully occupy his own presence. And a man whose internal state is dependent on external input is a man whose internal state can be controlled by managing the external input. That is the entire predatory calculation, right there, in the quality of your stillness. This is called baseline autonomic assessment in behavioral profiling, the reading of a person's fundamental nervous system state through their micro-behavioral responses to environmental stimuli in the first moments of entering a social space. It operates below conscious awareness in both the reader and the subject. The predatory mind does not decide to assess you, it assesses you automatically. You do not decide to broadcast the signal, you broadcast it automatically. Think about the last time you walked into a room full of people you did not know. What did your body do? Where did your eyes go? What happened to your posture in the 2 seconds before someone acknowledged your presence? If your body was looking for something from the room before it settled, you were broadcasting, and the man who was watching, the man who has learned to read this specific signal, received the broadcast before you had finished crossing the threshold. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, stoic, and the most powerful man alive during his reign, wrote something in his private journals that reads less like philosophy and more like a direct instruction for this exact moment. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He was not writing about meditation, he was writing about stillness as a strategic asset. The emperor who carried his own stillness into every room he entered could not be destabilized by what the room gave or withheld. He did not need the room's acknowledgement, he brought his own. The predatory personalities in the courts of Rome never succeeded in manipulating Marcus Aurelius the way they succeeded with other emperors. Not because he was more intelligent, because he was more still. And stillness communicates something to the predatory assessment that no amount of intelligence or success can replicate. It communicates this person's internal state cannot be accessed from the outside, and a person whose internal state cannot be accessed from the outside cannot be controlled from the outside. The predatory assessment receives this signal and concludes, high resistance, proceed elsewhere. Now let me give you the specific version of the stillness signal that most men miss because it does not happen in the dramatic moments, it happens in the micro moments. You are sitting in a meeting and someone says something subtly dismissive, not aggressively, subtly. The kind of comment that has plausible deniability. It could have been nothing or it could have been deliberate. Your posture shifts, your jaw tightens. Your response comes half a second faster than the conversation required. You moved, not dramatically, microscopically, but the predatory mind in the room noted the movement, because the movement answered the question. The question was, can this stimulus move him? The answer was yes. And yes means there is a control panel. And the predatory mind just found the first button. Stillness is not rigidity, it is not blankness. It is not the performance of someone who has been trained to suppress their responses. The man who suppresses his responses is not still. His suppression leaks through his micro-expressions, his vocal tension, his timing irregularities. Suppression is visible to anyone who knows what to look for. Real stillness is the absence of need. The specific quality of presence that belongs to a man who is not waiting for the room to give him anything because he already has everything he needs inside him. That man cannot be moved because there is nothing outside him powerful enough to alter what is inside him. That man does not broadcast. That man is invisible to the predatory assessment in the most valuable possible way, not because he is hiding, but because there is nothing about him that the assessment can use. Build the stillness, not as a performance, as the genuine byproduct of a man who has decided that what happens outside him does not govern what happens inside him. Because the first signal, the quality of your stillness, is the one that determines whether the assessment continues or terminates at the first 5 seconds. 2. The direction of your energy. The second signal is harder to see and more expensive when it is broadcasting. It is the direction of your energy. Specifically, whether your energy is directed outward in a way that communicates need, or whether it is self-contained in a way that communicates sufficiency. Let me make this concrete, because this is the signal that most men are broadcasting at full volume without knowing it. When you walk into a room of people you want to impress, where does your energy go? When you speak to someone whose approval matters to you, what does your body do? When you are in a social situation where your position is uncertain, what does your attention seek? If your energy moves outward, toward the approval, toward the recognition, toward the response of the people around you, you are broadcasting a signal that the predatory assessment reads as a single word: available. Not available in the social sense, available in the predatory sense. Available means this person's internal economy is running at a deficit. They need something from the external environment that they are not generating internally. And a man who needs something from the external environment can be controlled by managing his access to that thing. This is called approval-seeking behavioral signature in dark psychology, the cluster of micro-behaviors that communicate to the social environment that an individual's sense of security and adequacy is dependent on external validation. It manifests in specific patterns: the laugh that comes slightly too readily, the response that arrives slightly too quickly, the eye contact that checks for approval after each statement, the posture that subtly orients toward the person whose opinion is most valued. Every single one of these behaviors is invisible to the man performing them. Every single one of them is visible to the predatory mind observing them. Think about this scenario. You make a statement in a group. After you make it, do your eyes move to a specific person to check their reaction? Not obviously, subtly. A half second of checking. That half second is the entire broadcast. In that half second you have communicated, I need this person's approval for my statement to feel valid, which means their approval is a resource I am dependent on, which means withdrawing their approval is a lever that can be used to produce specific behaviors in me. The predatory mind notes the half second, notes the person your eyes move to, files both. Now they know the approval source. Now they know the leverage point. Now they know that managing your relationship with that specific person, or simply performing withdrawal of approval in a credible way, will produce the behaviors they need from you. All of this from a half-second eye movement you were not aware you made. You are thinking about a specific person right now, possibly in your workplace, possibly in your social circle, possibly closer, someone whose opinion of you has more weight than it should, someone whose reaction to what you say or do alters your internal state in a way that is disproportionate to the actual stakes. That person has leverage on you. Maybe they know it, maybe they do not, but if there is a predatory mind in your environment who is paying attention, that leverage has been noted. And here is where it gets darker. Because the outward energy signal does not only broadcast through your eyes, it broadcasts through your entire behavioral pattern in the hours and days surrounding that person. You work harder when they might be watching. You perform better when they might be present. Your output, your discipline, your focus, your standard of execution fluctuates based on whether that specific person will see the result. Think about what that means. It means your best is not available to you independently. It means your best is a conditional output produced in response to external observation rather than internal standard. It means the presence or absence of one specific person determines the quality of what you produce. That is not ambition, that is dependency, wearing the costume of ambition. And the predatory mind who has identified that person, the one whose presence activates your best performance, now holds a remote control for your output. Show you that person's approval and watch your performance spike. Withdraw that person's attention and watch your performance drop. Create uncertainty about that person's opinion of you and watch you become distracted, anxious, and significantly easier to manage. You have been doing this your entire career and calling it motivation. It is not motivation, it is an exposed wire, and every predatory personality in your professional environment is capable of touching that wire the moment it is in their interest to do so. Here is the version most men find hardest to hear, because it does not happen at work. It does not happen in the public social environment. It happens at home, in private, The way you behave differently when someone you want to keep is watching. The version of yourself you perform for the relationship you are most afraid of losing. The way your energy, your availability, your warmth, your effort, your attention is highest, precisely when you are most insecure about the relationship, and lowest when you feel secure. The predatory personality in an intimate relationship does not need sophisticated tools to read this pattern. When they are warm toward you, your energy flows outward, giving, accommodating, performing. When they are cool, your energy chases, reaching, over-explaining, over-providing. They have just discovered that the volume dial for your effort is in their hands. They did not install the dial. You installed it. Through every moment that you let their emotional temperature govern your behavioral output. This is called variable reinforcement dependency. In behavioral psychology, the specific psychological condition in which an individual's behavior is governed by inconsistent reward patterns from an external source, producing an escalating cycle of effort designed to stabilize the reward. It is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The unpredictability of the reward does not reduce the seeking behavior, it intensifies it. The cold shoulder followed by warmth, the withdrawal followed by affection, the distance followed by closeness. Each cycle produces more dependency than the last. Each cycle raises the volume of your outward directed energy. Each cycle makes the dial in their hands more powerful. You thought the cycle was communication problems. It was a power structure. You thought the inconsistency was their damage. It was your dial being calibrated. Now let us talk about what this looks like from the outside, because this is the part that will make you never unsee it. A man who is broadcasting outward energy in a social environment looks like a sun that has forgotten it is a sun. He is generating enormous heat and light, his enthusiasm, his effort, his engagement, and directing all of it at a specific target or set of targets, waiting to see what comes back. The problem is suns do not wait to see what comes back. Suns generate heat, regardless of whether the planets appreciate it. The planets do not make the sun brighter or dimmer. The sun's output is governed internally, not externally. The moment a sun starts waiting to see what comes back, it has stopped being a sun and started being a searchlight. And searchlights communicate one thing above all else: they are looking for something they do not have. The predatory assessment sees the searchlight and notes the absence. Whatever the searchlight is looking for, approval, validation, confirmation, desire, is the leverage point. Find the thing the searchlight is seeking, and you find the control mechanism. The man who is a sun, whose output is governed internally, who generates warmth without requiring the room to reflect it back, whose energy does not fluctuate based on what the environment provides, that man communicates something to the predatory assessment that shuts the entire second signal down. He is not looking for anything. And a man who is not looking for anything cannot be controlled through the promise of providing it. This is why Machiavelli was so precise about the relationship between need and power. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Most people misread this as advice about how to treat others. It is not. It is an observation about the mechanics of power. The man who is loved is the man whose love can be withdrawn. The man who is feared is the man who does not require the emotional response of the room to maintain his position. Love, in Machiavelli's framework, is a form of dependency. The lover is dependent on being loved in return, and dependency is a vulnerability. The person who controls access to what you love controls access to your behavior. Fear, in his framework, is not cruelty. It is the specific quality of presence that communicates. This man does not need anything from you, and the man who does not need anything from you cannot be controlled through the management of that need. The second signal, the direction of your energy, is what tells the predatory assessment whether you are a man who needs something from the room or a man who brings something to the room. Those are not the same man. They are not treated the same way. They are not assessed the same way, and they are not targeted the same way. The man whose energy moves outward, seeking, checking, requiring, that man is telling the predatory assessment that the leverage exists. It just needs to be located and applied. The man whose energy is self-contained, whose presence communicates that he arrived full, that the room can give him nothing he does not already have, that his adequacy is not a question the room has the authority to answer, that man shuts down the second signal before the assessment can complete it. And without the second signal, the assessment has nothing to work with. Here is the version of this that will make you uncomfortable, because it is not just the obvious social situations. It is every time you check your phone in a social situation to see if someone has responded. It is the way your energy changes when you walk into a room where someone you want to impress is present. It is the way your voice modulates slightly, becoming slightly more careful, slightly more considered when you are speaking to someone whose opinion you are worried about. All of it is broadcasting. All of it is visible. All of it is being read. The correction is not performance. The correction is investment. The genuine sustained investment in your own mission, your own standards, your own internal assessment of yourself that is so consuming and so real that the room's assessment becomes genuinely irrelevant. Not performed irrelevance. Genuine irrelevance. The kind that comes from a man who has somewhere more important to be than inside the approval cycle of the people around him. Build that mission. Not because someone is watching, because without it, your energy will always move outward, always seek, always broadcast. And as long as it broadcasts, the predatory minds in your environment will keep receiving the signal and keep knowing exactly what to offer you to get exactly what they want. Build the mission, contain the energy, become the sun. Because the second signal, the direction of your energy, is the one that tells the predatory assessment not just that you can be controlled, but precisely how. 3. How you handle being tested. Before the predatory mind commits to an approach, it runs one final assessment. Not passive this time. Active, it tests you. Not openly, not in a way that announces itself as a test, in a way that has complete plausible deniability. A casual comment that could have been nothing, a small boundary violation that could have been accidental, a brief interruption that could have been thoughtless rather than deliberate. The test is designed to look like normal social friction. What the test is actually measuring is your response to low-level social threat. Specifically, do you register the test? Do you respond to it? And if you respond, how? The predatory mind is not looking for you to react. Reaction is the worst possible response, and simultaneously the most common one. The man who reacts to the test, who visibly shifts, who responds faster or louder or more defensively than the moment required, has just provided the most valuable piece of information in the entire assessment. He has demonstrated that low-level stimuli can alter his behavior. This is called probe testing in behavioral intelligence, the deliberate introduction of low-stakes social stimuli to measure a target's response threshold and reaction pattern. It is not conscious in most predatory personalities. It is instinctive, the same way a predator in the wild will test the perimeter before committing to the approach. The instinct runs below conscious decision-making. They are not choosing to test you. They are testing you the way water tests a surface. Automatically, continuously, finding the path of least resistance. Let me give you the specific versions of the test you have already experienced. The casual interruption. You are speaking. Someone cuts across you, not aggressively, casually, the way you would cut across someone whose contribution you considered optional. How do you respond? Do you stop? Do you trail off? Do you push through? Do you address the interruption? What you do in that moment tells the predatory mind everything about your tolerance for boundary violation. If you stop and defer, you have communicated that your contributions can be interrupted without consequence. That is a boundary without enforcement. And a boundary without enforcement is not a boundary, it is a suggestion. The dismissive comment. Someone says something mildly diminishing about a position you hold or a decision you have made. Not hostile, casual, the way you would dismiss something that does not require serious engagement. What do? Do you over-explain? Do you defend? Do you attempt to change their mind? Every additional sentence you produce in defense of yourself beyond the first clean response is additional evidence that their opinion of you has access to your internal state. You are telling them the dismissal landed. You are telling them the dismissal matters. You are telling them that if they want to produce a specific behavior in you, dismissal is a reliable lever. The Schrodinger's joke. The comment that is delivered like a joke but contains a real diminishment, said with a smile. Plausible deniability, fully intact. If you react, you are being oversensitive. If you do not react, the diminishment stands. Most men react. Not because they are weak, because the comment was designed to make the non-reaction feel like capitulation. The design is the trap. The correct response to the Schrodinger's joke is neither laughter nor defensiveness. It is the response of a man who received the message underneath the joke and communicates without announcement, without drama, simply through the quality of his response, that he received it and is not alarmed by it. The response of a man who has been tested before and does not need to announce that he recognized the test because the recognition is already visible in how he responds to it. Think about the Roman Emperor Hadrian, one of the most politically sophisticated rulers in the history of the empire. His court was full of men who ran these tests constantly, probing for weaknesses, measuring response thresholds, identifying who could be moved and how. Hadrian survived and thrived not because he was aggressive or paranoid, but because he had developed the specific quality that makes probe testing useless. He was consistent. His response to a test was identical to his response to genuine interaction. His response to a boundary violation was identical to his response to an accident. His response to a diminishment was identical to his response to a compliment. Not because he did not register the difference, because his internal state was anchored deeply enough that the difference did not produce a visible differential in his behavior. The probe test only works when the target responds differently to the test than they respond to normal interaction. The differential is the data. When there is no differential, there is no data. When there is no data, the assessment cannot complete. Hadrian's consistency was not a technique. It was the authentic behavioral expression of a man who was so thoroughly anchored in his own identity and mission that the attempts to move him simply did not find purchase. And the predatory minds in his court, and there were many, learned over time that the testing was not productive, not because he punished them for it, because he simply did not provide the differential they needed to work with. Become the man who provides no differential, not through suppression, not through performance, through the genuine sustained development of an internal anchor, so solid that the tests, however well designed, however precisely targeted, simply do not reach it. The man without a differential is the most dangerous man in any room he enters, not because he is aggressive, because he is unreadable. And unreadable means unusable, and unusable means the predatory assessment returns one result, and one result only, not this one. Now step back from the three signals and look at what they share. The quality of your stillness, the direction of your energy, how you handle being tested. Every single one of them communicates the same thing to the predatory assessment running on you in the first 5 seconds. Where is the control panel? The predatory mind is not assessing your character, not your intelligence, not your success. It is asking one question about your behavioral architecture. Where is the point of entry? Where is the stimulus that alters your state? Where is the dependency that can be managed? Where is the threshold that, once found, produces the predictable response? 3 signals, 3 answers to the same question. 3 pieces of evidence about whether the control panel exists and where it is located. The man who has done the work, who has built the stillness, who has contained the energy, who has removed the differential, does not have a visible control panel. And the predatory assessment, which runs automatically and continuously and below conscious decision-making in the minds of the people around you, receives one conclusion about that man. This one will not stop me, is not the calculation it makes. The calculation it makes is there is nothing to work with here. And that calculation ends the assessment before it can become an approach. If what this video exposed produced that specific cold recognition, the recognition of seeing a signal you have been broadcasting named precisely for the first time, like this video, not as a courtesy, because it means this content found the right person. Subscribe if you have not. This channel does not exist to comfort you. It exists to give you the kind of precision that changes how you operate in every room you enter. Now, what I gave you today is what this platform allows. There is a level beneath this, the specific counter protocols for each of the 3 signals, the exact behavioral and psychological moves that not only eliminate the signals but actively communicate to predatory personalities that the assessment has been run, and the result is, do not proceed. The deeper mechanics of how predatory minds are identified before they complete the approach. The offensive application of everything covered in this video, how the man who understands these signals uses that understanding to read every room he walks into with the precision of someone who knows exactly what the assessment is looking for and can therefore see it running in real time on everyone around him. Those frameworks exist behind the join button below. Inside is a small, deliberately selective circle of men who have decided that walking through the world as a readable target is no longer acceptable. Men who want the complete system, not the introduction, the full architecture, at the level of detail this format cannot contain. The men inside already know why they pressed it. The circle stays small. That is what makes it worth being inside. You stayed until the end of a video that required something from you. Not passive watching, active confrontation with your own behavioral signals. That is not common. Guard that capacity, the same way this video told you to guard everything else. The assessment is running right now, in every room, on every man who enters it. The only question that remains is what it returns when it runs on you. Make sure it returns one answer, not this one. I will see you in the next one.